As many of you have probably seen, I've had a series going for a while now where I compare and pin the assassins and Templars of the series against each other in different categories and determine who is the best at said subject and skill. I've made tons of videos like this for the assassins, and I've done the deadliest and smartest for the Templars. So now I figure it is a good time to compare the Templars of the Assassin's Creed series and determine which one is physically the strongest. We're going to be talking about pure physical strength here. I'm also only going to be talking about the main Templars of the series, the protagonists and antagonists, and I'm not going to be including the Order of Ancients or whatever. Also, it's a good point that a lot of Templars in this series are either really old and not very good fighters, or they just don't fight at all and are more of politicians or leaders, so that should help narrow it down quite a bit. But there is no definitive proof saying who is the strongest Templar, so it's really up to our own interpretation and opinions, so feel free to let me know who you think the strongest Templar is and why in the comments. So first things first, let's rule out some Templars that are clearly not the strongest and don't even really fight. Governor Torres from Black Flag is an obvious one, more of a politician than anything. I mean, he was literally a governor, and he never really fights in the game, and even if he did, he's pretty old, so he'd get beaten very easily, so not the strongest at all. Prince Ahmet from AC Revelations. Now, he is definitely younger and likely physically capable, and you do fight him, albeit briefly. To me, he's still obviously not the strongest, as Ezio bested him easily in combat. Robert de Sable, the original Big Templar from AC1, actually seems quite skilled in combat. He easily stops Altair at the beginning of the game, even if he does eventually fall to him later. But he leads his army of Templars himself, so it seems he actually fights, and I would imagine decently as well. But it's nothing so crazy or powerful that would make me believe he's the strongest Templar. Rodrigo Borgia from AC2 and Brotherhood. He's more of a tactician and master manipulator than a fighter, but for an old man, he's got some power. I mean, he holds his own against a young Ezio multiple times, so he clearly had training and has decent combat skill. I think it's really just his old age that holds him back. Not to mention, he died super easily to Cesare with an apple, so I don't know what Rodrigo thought he was doing, but alright. I think Rodrigo definitely holds his own and is a decent fighter, but still not quite on the level of the Templars best in the series. Charles Lee from AC3 doesn't fight a whole lot. There are a few sections, especially at the beginning of the game, where you play as Haytham, but he's a very capable fighter. He served in many armies and of course fought in pivotal battles in both the Seven Seas and Revolutionary Wars. Granted, he gets absolutely destroyed by Connor, but it's Connor, who makes almost everyone he fights look like a total amateur. Charles Lee, again sort of similar to Robert de Sable, is clearly a good and capable fighter with some decent strength, but still not on the level of the best in my opinion. Germain from Unity isn't a fighter. He's a silversmith who can sort of hold his own. He did kill that one guard, I suppose, even though it wasn't really through combat or anything. The only reason he's become so strong and powerful at the end is because he had the Sword of Eden. Without it, he's probably light work for Arno, so Germain is clearly not the strongest. Crawford Steric is sort of similar, although I do think he's a much more skilled fighter than Germain. He's also a pretty big guy, so he has quite a bit of physical strength. Again, it's kind of hard to tell how strong he actually is, since the only time you really fight him is when he has the Shroud of Eden and you're just messing him up and he heals himself over and over. Steric's an interesting one, and maybe if we had seen more of him, he'd have a better case, but to me at least, he's not up there with the best. Now, the three Templars I believe to be the strongest and the best of the best in combat, in no particular order by the way, are Shay Cormac, Cesare Borgia, and Haytham Kenway. Shay Cormac, of course, had tons of training and experience, starting out as an assassin, training at Achilles' homestead, then of course having plenty of opportunity to flex his strength against the assassins when he becomes a Templar. To me, he's also a very agile Templar. He's not someone who uses brute strength, but he definitely has a lot of it and is easily one of the best fighters. I mean, nobody cut down the assassins like Shay did. Haytham Kenway, I feel, is obviously a really strong character, and he's an extremely skilled fighter. I mean, he's a Kenway. His father cleared decks of ships no problem, and his son, well, his son basically bulldozed the entire Templar Order and everything they built, not to mention killed Haytham, so. But what's obvious from the beginning of AC3 when you play as Haytham is he's a great fighter and is very strong strong physically. He can clear out clusters of enemies within seconds, just like Connor. He does have a more elegant or classy fighting style, I would say, as opposed to Connor's scrappier, more aggressive fighting style. But I'd argue Haytham is as strong, if not possibly stronger than Connor. If Haytham and Connor fought each other at full strength with no injuries, and if Haytham wasn't holding back because he didn't want to kill his son, I think it'd be a very good fight, and there's a good chance Haytham could win, which is huge because I think Connor is easily the strongest assassin in the series. Haytham is also very similar to Connor in height and build. He's believed to be around the same height as Connor, who's the tallest assassin in the series, so I think it's safe to say Haytham has a lot of physical strength. Then there's Cesare Borgia, who's also a very skilled, strong fighter. He's young and is a near match for Ezio in combat, who is a strong fighter and assassin himself. Cesare was out there on the front lines with his massive armies fighting in countless battles. It is kind of hard to compare him to Shay and Haytham, since it's not like we ever played as him or saw too much of his skill, but we know he's at least close to being on par with Ezio. So of these three, who is the strongest Templar? I think a good argument could be made for either one of them. However, my ranking would be Cesare third strongest, Shay at second strongest, leaving Haytham Kenway as the series' strongest Templar. Haytham was an unstoppable force in combat and had tons of physical strength, and he had Connor dead to rights in AC3 as he bested his son in the fight, and if it weren't for his hesitation or soft spot for his own son, who knows how that all would have turned out. Haytham Kenway is honestly one of my favorite characters in this series in general. It's too bad we never got a full game as him, but with what we did get, he clearly has a ton of strength. But that's just my opinion, and feel free to let me know in the comments who you think the strongest Templar is and why. If you guys enjoyed this video, I've made tons of others like it. I'll leave links in the description for both my videos on the Deadliest Templar and Smartest Templar, as well as who's the strongest assassin. Consider dropping a like and subscribing to the channel if you're new here. I make a lot of Assassin's Creed related content, and other than that, thanks for watching and have a great day, Assassins.